One of the arguments against buying copper bullion rounds like this one is how much over spot they cost, making them an unattractive purchase for penny pinchers. Pun intended. I'll explore that concern from a few angles that you may not have considered. Who knows, I may even change your mind about picking up a few. Have you ever heard someone complain about the premium on cut emeralds over the raw stones they come from? Probably not, but go with me a bit on this. Say you have this handful of rough emeralds. You can pick them up quite cheaply, as you can see at a place like Etsy. I know, since I've done so for rock tumbling. But the process of cutting and polishing a fine emerald from the raw material raises the value of the gemstone considerably. Even at the same site, you can see the dramatic price difference if you were to go by something like price per ounce. So let's take that to the argument that copper bullion rounds are overpriced for the cost of the metal. I think if you look at silver's premium to metal ratio as your only basis for comparison, it's a very fair argument to make. However, a gold buyer could make a similar argument about silver 1-ounce coins, since the percentage of a gold bullion coin's price over spot is even less. At the core of those arguments, however, is also an assumption that investment in the value of the metal is the goal. Simply put, no, I do not stack copper bullion rounds, bars, pipes, and scrap metal for that matter, to the rafters with the hopes of someday reaping profits from my glimmering orange hoard. Sure, it would be a nice bonus if the price were to rocket to the moon, but for me it's more about the packaging and potential small barter value when it comes to the 1-ounce rounds. Pure copper content just gives it more intrinsic utility than a Nuka-Cola bottle cap or a Chuck E. Cheese token. What many may not be considering also is how much it costs to make a nice-looking bullion round that is attractive for trade and to look at. And sure, some for the manufacturer to turn a profit. That cost is going to be there for copper, silver, and gold bullion rounds, even if the percentage of the total price of the round dedicated to manufacturing it changes. Having something professionally made to exacting specifications is also part of the value I see in one of these. This is because people see value in a finished product, and the effort goes into making a cut and polished emerald, for example, again. Well, it looks a lot less like a rock. Sure, it's not the best analogy, since there's a lot more that goes on into selecting the perfect emerald, and there's craftsmanship involved that I won't pretend to understand. But I've purchased very large citrine stones for tumbling that are dirt cheap even compared to a tiny teaspoonful of lab-made citrines when it comes to cost per ounce. Apples and oranges, sure. But what I'm getting at is that the cost of metal is not the end-all be-all to owning a copper round like this one if potential small barter is one of your goals. It's a part of it, but not everything. The edible mess is another fun analogy I've made in the past. When it comes to the value of mint-struck, shiny, mirror-finished copper round versus a pound of a lump of metal I poured myself at home, a pile of scrap, or a sack of old and dirty coins with variable amounts of copper in them. It goes something like this. If someone offered you a loaf of bread, some messy meats, and some mayonnaise squirted into the palms of your outstretched hands, crudely crafted for you on the side of the road, would it be worth more or less to you than a smaller but nicely made packaged sandwich which you could give to someone else later? I guess it depends on how hungry you are. If you want to take that sandwich back across town and to the outskirts over to your not currently to the point of starving wife in your cabin, which one would she prefer? The pretty packaged sandwich neatly kept, or the edible mess which might have more weight to it and meat? Well, I guess that could depend on your wife's usual appetite. That said, would her eyes gleam at a misshapen lump of copper poured by yours truly, with all sorts of bubbles, impurities, and imperfections, with my initials crudely scratched in the back? Or a shiny coin-like round? Again, a matter of taste, I suppose. So you could have both. All of that said, Manufacturing a bullion round with a mirror finish and fancy design is not a cost-free process, and the premium you pay over spot is not all due to some fat cat rubbing his palms together considering what kind of profit the market will bear at any given time. There are several steps in taking this raw copper ore to this shiny bullion round. Even once you get past extracting and purifying the raw metal from ore into 0.999 fine copper, the US Mint, in this example, has kindly listed out many steps needed to get a quality coin into your hands. While I'm no expert on the differences between how the mint, or a mint like the Sunshine Mint, makes bullion rounds versus the US Mint, I assume these are basic steps that most large manufacturers, not the guy in his backyard with a stump and a hammer, have to go through to get a good specimen to market. These include blanking, annealing, washing and drying, upsetting, striking, and packaging. Again, you can see why there might be a so-called premium on any material of coin. This is not something I could do on my stove with a fry pan followed up with a hammer and a stump in my backyard with the same results. I can tumble a sapphire all day, but I can't make a cut sapphire with my $50 tumbler. These manufacturers may use old and long since paid for machines, but they also have to maintain the equipment and pay for the labor. So I do find it a bit odd when people look at the price of silver, for example, and get angry when the price is a few dollars more than the paper spot price of silver. It's not a digit on a screen. It's something that took time to make, even if it fluctuates with inflation, for example, and sometimes is more about demand than anything else. Speaking of silver, let's look at the price of a silver round. I don't want to get into official US Mint silver coins because they have additional numismatic value. I'm just talking generic bullion rounds. Right now, a generic silver bullion round without any fancy or limited collectible design is around $27 or $28, and the spot price of the metal is about $24. So your silver premium is actually worth more than the cost of a single copper round. With this in mind, even though percentage-wise the cost of the premium is less than that for a copper round, the fixed cost of manufacturing, marketing, and getting the round into your hands remains. There is no doubt that in pure metal calculations, I could get more copper for my money if I just gathered some scrap. Hopefully pure so I can avoid toxic fumes, and heat and pour some for myself with a handful of tools for the job. If you don't have a good way to obtain it, you can look for budget pours online. This is a pretty neat one I found on eBay. With these so-called shot nuggets, you'd have to weigh each piece in a barter scenario versus the nice 1 ounce stamped on a coin. I think this is a good portable compromise to a giant paperweight type of bar when it comes to portability, or certainly a bunch of pipes strapped to your back. And it would lend itself to an old-timey prospector feel if you had some stored away in a dusty leather pouch. The main concern of my proposal here, as in my last video on copper valuation last week, though, is will the value of professionally struck pure bullion rounds I purchase now meet or exceed around $2 per 2023 standards when it comes to barter or trade in an economic collapse, SHTF, or other apocalyptic scenario? Or will it only be worth the scrap melt value? I like to think it will at least give me the stored value I originally paid for it, but of course I could be wrong. Maybe I'd end up using them all for their utility, as I laid out in my 10 reasons to have copper in your survival stash, which would be fine enough if that's what was called for. But if you own just one, hold it in your fingers, spin it around, look at the detail, feel the heft. I think you'd agree it immediately feels like it's worth more than a game token made of aluminum, zinc, or a bottle cap, or a handful of zinc pennies for that matter. For larger barter trades, you'll still likely want silver or even gold. I'll save a discussion on junk, constitutional, or fractional silver for another video. But I see that metal generally is something to hold on to for critical trades, not something to barter away for small, cheap items of a temporary nature. And I don't want to have to go through educating the person I'm trading to as to what the date ranges of a particular silver dime might be. That's something else I also covered recently. Copper for the small stuff, silver for the medium to bigger trades, and gold if you have it for the big stuff. So around $2 for copper, $25 for silver, and $2,000 an ounce for gold. If you do decide to get yourself some shiny copper coins, as you may have seen earlier in the video, right now there is a sale at Golden State Mint that I took advantage of. And before I go further, no one sponsors my videos or gives me anything for free. It's just a site I use along with others. That said though, by the way, hey potential sponsors, please send me free stuff and I will review it. Anyway, all joking aside, I think this sale is a good one because you'll notice it's very important. Any quantity listed beside the pricing. Now, I apologize if this sale is up by the time you see this video, but usually bullion sites will only offer low pricing if you purchase hundreds of rounds with an as low as qualifier. For example, there is a sale now at SD Bullion, and it will show the cheapest price of $1.49 for a copper round, but only if you buy 500 plus rounds. Don't get fooled by that. The new Golden State Mint design with the eagle is one I've purchased before and has a nice mirror-type finish in the backdrop. And Buffalo Head design, by contrast, is more of a classic. Don't recall the last time I've seen 20 rounds, where you could pick up 20 rounds for less than $1.50 at a site like this, so maybe get some if you've been on the fence. That way, I'll have someone else to trade with after the apocalypse who appreciates the value of a handful of copper rounds in the pocket. Golden State Mint also has silver on an any quantity sale as well if you've been waiting to pick some of that up. So, go for it, silver bugs. Well, that's all I had today, fellow mutants. I hope you found that useful. This is Copper Mutant, signing out.